I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Friday, September the 6th. There was a lot of things I could have started with, a lot of ways I could have entitled this report with everything that's going on. You know, they had that special there on CNN where all your Democratic presidential candidates got together and talked about environmental things. And it seemed like beef kept coming up as one of the things that they are really targeting. They just almost made it sound like a sin for people to eat healthy protein, and saying things like we need to evolve in our diets and things. I think we did evolve in our diets, and we rose to the top of the food chain, and that's how come we can have these steaks and hamburgers and for that matter all kinds of animal proteins. But Kamala Harris probably the worst, saying that the government needs to regulate how much meat people can eat. I tell you what, guys, I know that we're not a very big part of the industry. Well, they say less than 2% of America's population is directly involved in production agriculture. Those of us that are primarily involved in the cattle end of it would sure be less than half of that. But I tell you what, share it with people whenever you're talking to them out and about. Share it with your friends, share it with your kids, share it with people at work if you have a town job. But I tell you what, we have to get that stuff stopped. It's absolutely ridiculous, and here we're struggling with the market, struggling with different conditions out there, and then having people that are wanting to lead this country out fighting against us, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. But I had a friend of mine say, and he put it in pretty good words, that those kinds of things that they're talking about, that's what happens when you have generations and generations that haven't been hungry for a long, long time. Now, if you were talking about this in the early 1900s, you know, people would have sure been wanting to eat as much beef as they could get their hands on. And now that you have people that are spoiled rotten, then you all of a sudden it's a sin to eat meat, eat beef. That's ridiculous. But on a positive note, before I get to this depressing market, I want to say that the prayers that we asked for Curtis Ward with National Livestock in Oklahoma City were answered. He made a miraculously recovery. It's just unbelievable. You know, it was almost right there at death's door, and all of a sudden he come out of it. He seems to be doing okay, and he actually went home. So that's how much it did. So thank you guys so much for that, and I know he and his family thank you also. Now let's talk about this market. We knew it was bad. Our last visit entitled Cleaning to $1. You know, I'm pretty sure we weren't going to hold anything better than $1 on the Southern Plains basis. As we went into the end of this week, well, Thursday morning they started out with $1 a pound for fat cattle in the Southern Plains, and guys started taking it right off. You know, we talked about you've got to ask more for these cattle before you'll ever get more. Nobody seems to want to do that. They just started puking them at $1 because the board was less than $1, and that gave you a little basis, right? Well, then the board started going down some more, and the packers, knowing how much these hedged feeders love to jump for that basis, they just backed up another $1. So now we're down to $99 a hundred by the time we got late in the morning on for the rest of the day. It's going to be light movement. People weren't real aggressive on taking that, especially in the Northern Plains, but it just goes to show you, these packers, you know, most of us, when we get our hands slapped or we're being looked at or we've gotten noticed for doing some things that are not too great, we get sent to the office. If we see the cop turn around behind us and put his lights on, we don't start flipping people off as we're pulling over. No, but we're more concerned. Well, this investigation come up against your big packers about collusion, price fixing, gouging, and all the things that happened since that fire at Holcomb County, or Holcomb, Kansas there, at Finney County, that they're not concerned, almost cocky. And I heard several people say that, it just emboldened them even more. How dare you even come and take a look at what we're doing here, of course we're price gouging, what's it to you, and just unbelievable. But it just goes to confirm that these packers are not your cattleman's friend. They haven't been. People tried to push that around saying, oh, we're working for the end product and we want the consumer to have his best eating experience and we have to work together. Bullshit. These guys are out to gouge as much as they can, make as much as they possibly can, and cut the producer's throat and the cattle feeder's throat too. Even the ones that they've got arrangements with. They don't care about them either. But it's really tough because when you talk about the packer, who is it? Is it a building? We don't want to accuse the guys that are running around doing the dealings or the guys you talk to in the office every week. They're not necessarily it. It's a figurehead. It's a board member. It's kind of a faceless enemy that you have there, and nobody really claims responsibility because I cuss them to and fro every day, and nobody ever calls me and say, hey, quit talking about me that way. No, nobody's going to stand up and say that. You're just talking at an entity, and it makes it a whole lot easier to do, but nothing ever happens about it. But a friend of mine sent me this chart here, emailed it to me, and it's when you start looking at charts, we can talk about facts and figures, and sometimes you grasp them, and sometimes they go in one ear and out the other. But take a look at this chart. On the top, it shows your choice boxes and how they've gone up over the last, and this is like a 10-year chart, but you notice how sharply they've gone up, and then you can go back and look at when cattle were high in 2014, you see how high they were too. But then your middle chart is spot live cattle futures price, the front month there, which is your spot live cattle futures, which is vaguely indicative of what your fat cattle market was, but about as close as anything else we can get. And then the bottom is the spread between those two. Look how that spread between those two is just taken off. Indirectly, you can say this is packer profits right here. And just look how they've launched. And by far the highest in over 10 years. And that just goes to show you what's going on right now. Investigation being called. Nah, that doesn't even bother them a bit. You'd have thought they could have come in today, bid that dollar and left it out there on the table and tried to grab some cattle. But nah, they just backed it up as soon as they saw the board backing up a little bit. But for as many cattle as, and I don't take a lot of stock in that show list, but the show list was heavier. As many cattle that were out there for sale, as many cattle as they say that we have market ready coming down the line, as much money as your packers are making, they've still been pretty short bought and continue to be that way. I hear a lot of rumors out there, most of them towards the bullish side, anti-packer side, but it's funny because a lot of those rumors that you hear going around, other people have heard them too, and kind of when there's smoke, there's fire. Whenever you start hearing some of those rumors that come out in pop news and things, when it finally ends up, you come back around and there was some truth to it too, but cannot confirm any of these rumors. But there were rumors out there that the packers have started calling up cattle, the formula cattle, pulling them ahead early because they're so short bought on negotiated sales. So you keep hearing stories about how they don't have enough capacity even to kill their captive supplies. Their formula cattle are going to start stacking up on them. No, they're pulling them ahead is what the rumor is, just between you and me. But some other rumors out there. I heard a rumor about somebody that knew somebody that worked in industrial electrical things and had a friend or a friend of a friend, a mailman's dog's uncle, saying that, I've been in that Holcomb plant over there doing a lot of electrical work. I don't see what the holdup is. They come out middle of the week saying that they weren't going to be able to open that thing until January, but they would open it by January. He's saying, hey, they could kill cattle in there a lot sooner than that if they wanted to. Why would they want to? You think, well, they're paying all these employees because they've got them under contract through the union and everything. That would be a drop in the bucket compared to how much money they're making. These packers, since this fire has called this upheaval in the market, are making billions, not millions, billions. Are just raking it absolutely in. No truth to that rumor, though. Could not confirm that rumor. Just something I heard, just between you and me. Other rumors that you hear out there that these packers and the packer friends are starting to get bullish down the road here, maybe end of the year, first of next year. Now that's the wildest one that I heard, but you need to always be looking for opportunities when things look the dimmest. When it gets so bad that you don't even want to look anymore, it's time to start looking for opportunities. And we're bound to be getting close to the bottom here. Most people say within weeks here of getting to the bottom, because this so-called wall of cattle may not be quite as hard to climb as we thought. And we're always, they're always trading cattle out ahead. So if they keep trading them ahead, we're going to get into a spot where there are not as many of those market-ready cattle out there. So start looking for the opportunity to cash in when this thing turns around and it starts coming back. The old saying is, one of my favorites is, when the town drunk tells you this fat cattle market really sucks, it's time to start going the other way, guys. And we're just about there. But let's look at the board on Thursday. October live cattle futures down $1.15 at 97.87. And it was down some in the morning when that dollar was out there. As they started taking the dollar, it backed up some more, went back down to 99. So really not much of a basis out there for your hedge feeder to grab. December live cattle futures down $1.35 at 102.22. September feeder cattle down $1.15 at 134.40. And October feeders down $1.10 at 132.32. Your fat cattle trade, as dismal as it was, I'm going to tell you about it. But we'd had a little bit of trade all along in the northern plains. It kept getting lower and lower. It was probably mostly $1.03, I would say, up until Thursday. But then on Thursday, come out there and guys that wanted to sell cattle started puking them a lot worse. But in the northern plains, Iowa confirmed about 5,300 on the day for Thursday, and from 101 to 107. Mostly 101 to 103 or 4. That 7 was on a couple of strings. There had to have been some really nice cattle. That's a shame that it takes really, really nice cattle to get $1.07. But to 163 to all the way up to 169, mostly 163 to 165 or so, but had some stick out deals, and they've got the premium quality cattle up there in Iowa up to 169. Nebraska, almost 8,000 head there confirmed, from 101 to 103, mostly on the live basis, 160 to 166 on a dress basis. If you compare that to the bulk of last week's trade, that's $9 to $10 lower dressed. Southern Plains, Kansas, and Texas sold at $1, and then it backed up to 99. So 99 to $1. That's mostly $3 as much as $4 lower than a week ago. We're thinking light movement though, and they really have not had a decent movement. 5-area feeding region negotiated sales since the fire happened. As aggressive as they've been slaughtering cattle, as aggressive as they've been making money hand over fist, have not really got aggressive buying cattle, and that's just another ploy that they use to keep the market under pressure. Box beef cutout values lower, especially on select on Thursday. In the afternoon report come out, choice cuts $229.42, down $1.23. Selects $204.47, down $4.48. So your beef purchasers are sure sucking back on that. But after guys, your consumers are trying to swallow those higher prices, they're not going to need as much product because they're going to back off of it. Your slaughter so far for the week, 349,000. You compare that to a year ago. You can't last week so much, but you compare that to a year ago, 358,000. It was down 9,000, but you know they'll pick that up on Saturday. Look at your actual data, slaughter data for the week ending August 24th. Your average dressed steer weight 884 pounds, so getting up there pretty good. We're not, I would say we're current, but these cattle are pretty good size out there. But we definitely got cattle to move. But like I said, we're getting in so deep buying these cattle and staying on current on the marketings, and there's so much captive supply out there. Your negotiated sales really don't matter that much. So if we're not selling a lot of those, you know, big deal. They might take them to the auction or do something like that with them. I wish more people would. Then we would have a little bit of competition out there. But we're going to work through these cattle, and don't be surprised if we don't bottom this thing out here within the next couple of weeks. But let's talk about some other things going on. On Wednesday, there, Alma, Nebraska, the Alma Livestock Auction had a conference there, an informational meeting where that's kind of a cooperative sale barn there, and they work here with DV Auction. I talk about them as much as I can. Nice sale right there, right on the Kansas line. But they're starting to build that sale barn back up, and they had about 100 local producers there, and they were telling them about it, and come back to Alma and then bring your cattle in here. And we got a competitive market, and had a good turnout there, and I completely back up the PowerPoint presentation they had there. Not exactly sure what they were talking about, but it looks like to me they were really hitting it on the right on the right point. But also the same day there as that conference, the Kaup brothers that are heavily involved in that sale at Alma, Nebraska, and the Harlan County Cattlemen's Association fed real meat, real beef hamburgers, not no fake stuff. They fed real hamburgers to the grade school and the high school there in Alma, Nebraska, and said the kids absolutely loved it, wiping their mouths with their sleeve and coming back for seconds. But no Gaines burgers, fake meat involved in that feeding that they put on for the school children there in Alma, Nebraska. Let's talk about what else is going on. Kingsville Livestock Auction in Kingsville, Missouri has got a big run of yearlings coming up here this Tuesday, this next Tuesday. Going to have like 3,500 of them. And that sale barn is just south and east of Kansas City right there. And got a lot of good cattle in there. Cattle that can definitely go anywhere in the country. Most all of them go north out of there, either to Iowa or Nebraska. But good people running that sale. And if you talk to Rick Anstein or his son Jeremy Anstein, or the younger son Jared, which Jared called and told me about this good run of cattle he got, said most all these yearlings going to be right off grass. So if you guys still want to buy some green grass yearlings, there's not many of them left. You can find some Tuesday, Kingsville Livestock Auction. You can watch the broadcast there on Cattle USA, but the market will be reporting right here on Cattle Market Central, and we'll be giving it to you on the National Beef Wire and on Feeder Flash. So get in there and do that. Let's talk about your feeder market on Thursday, your real-time index on Cattle Market Central. Late in the day on Thursday at 136.76. Dropped $2.55 from just Wednesday's close there, but that was a sharp drop, and be looking for your cash CME index to be dropping as soon as they get it updated here within a day and a half or so. But some of your sales on Thursday: Farmers and Ranchers Livestock in Salina, Kansas, 1,900 head there. Feeder steers were called $3 to $6 lower. The feeder heifers more like steady to $2 lower, with spots as much as $6. But tough market there, and nothing, no market really on feeder cattle to brag about anywhere. I'm just telling you guys what's going on, and I sure wouldn't brag somebody up for a down market. Everybody's going to have a down market the way things are. It's about as tough as it could be anywhere. I'm just giving you some quotes. Pratt, Kansas, Winter Livestock and Pratt 1,150 head there. Feeder steers $1 to $2 lower. Other classes were not well tested there. And those guys in south central Kansas, of course, they sold so many cattle right there late in the summer. As we start moving to the end of the summer, they've after that fire, they just decided to pull their cattle closer to them. Most of the guys don't have to absolutely move them, and they just haven't been selling a lot of cattle in that part of the country. Mitchell, South Dakota had a big sale. 4,700 head, which is not big for them, but for this time of the year, it's pretty good size. Feeders there, $2 to $4 lower. Some of those weighing over 1,000 pounds were $2 to as much as $8 lower. But you know, I always tell you guys that Mitchell, South Dakota is famous for having those heavy backgrounded steers, kind of near beers that you can take right on to feed, and it won't take too long on them. And a lot of good ones there, and a lot of those guys know how to get those cattle to that weight without pushing them too hard, where they still got some go to them. Look at this individual quote. 110 steers weighed 1078 in Mitchell, South Dakota, $120. Now, they called those cattle weighing over 1,000 as much as $8 lower, but when you've got a fat cattle market that's right around $1, that $1.20 on some weighing nearly 11 sounds pretty steep. But that's what happened there at Mitchell, South Dakota. I'll tell you about another sale. El Dorado, Kansas there. They're in the Flint Hills, and most all those cattle moved earlier in the summer, around the latter part of July, when they come off double stock. Some of your people that own the grass or around the outside edges that don't fall in with the rest of the Flint Hills still got cattle coming off grass, and there'll be some direct deliveries, and there'll be some cattle come into the sale barn. Remember, I tell you that runs get good in the sale barn when the market's really, really good, or it really, really sucks. Well, this time it really, really sucks. So they didn't want to take any of the country bids that were out there. They brought them into the sale barn to get competitive bidding and see how well they could do. They had about 2,100 head of feeders there in El Dorado. And this is the market, guys, on good cattle. 681 head of the 8-weight steers, all of them there in El Dorado, Kansas. They averaged 864, so a lot of those cattle weighing right up against 9, with a weighted average price of $131.64. That's what they're worth. 383 head of the 9-weight steers averaged 927 at $127.10. And then look at one big group of heifers there, or I say group, weight group there. 246 head of the 6-weight heifers averaged 647 at $135.99. That's your feeder flash for Friday.